If you could build anything you wanted, what would it be?
Robots as smart as people. Artificial intelligence, AI. The idea is to port the software from the human brain.
Artificial intelligence, as we understand it, is based off if and then algorithms. That's artificial intelligence as we know it, and that's artificial intelligence which is on the market today. This is not based on if and then algorithms. It's based on the reverse engineering of the human mind.
M's are very much like humans, but they are not like the typical human. The typical M is a copy of the few hundred most productive humans. So in fact, they are as elite compared to the typical human as a typical billionaire, Nobel Prize winner, Olympic gold medalist, head of state. M's look on humans perhaps with nostalgia and gratitude, but not so much respect.
We can't ignore that element there, because these M's are going to basically be the elite of the world who are sort of feeding their brains basically to create the M. It's gonna be that elite class, right? The Illuminati, whatever you want to call it. This has been the race. You know, this has kind of been what they've been trying to do in the apotheosis, in the godhood that they sought, and what the esotericists have believed is the restoration of Eden. You know, so all those fairy tales and mythologies about living forever, the fountain of youth, and things like that. This is sort of their technological answer to all that. And it's quite fascinating to consider that, again, we live in this time where we get to see this unfold.
If you aren't at least a bit disturbed by something I tell you here, you're just not paying attention. Okay, the first thing I can tell you is that M's spend most of their life in virtual reality. This is what you might look like if you were using virtual reality. And this is what you might see. Sunlight glinting off of water, you might hear gulls flying above, you might even feel the wind on their cheeks or smell seawater with advanced hardware. Now, if you were to spend a lot of time here, you might want a dashboard where you could do things like make a phone call, move to a new virtual world, check your bank account. Now, while this is what you would look like in virtual reality, this is what an M would look like in virtual reality. It's computer hardware sitting in a server rack somewhere. But still, it could see and experience the same thing.
We will be the ones that hold the actual physical property that houses the servers and whatnot. So in a certain sense, these M's can't survive without humans. But the problem is, the human heart is corrupt, folks. And remember, the M's can affect our physical world.
You have something like 2 to the 500th power of these guys living in that chip. So the way I think about it is that the shadows of these parallel worlds overlap with ours. And if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours to make an effect in our world. Now, this may sound very odd to you and bizarre, and in fact, I am using language that a normal theoretical physicist probably wouldn't use, but this is, what I'm telling you is absolutely correct and in line with the way that these things actually work.
And man, that really taps into the whole idea of digitizing reality, the idea of having the spiritual dimension be virtually created, really, around us. Their existence is going to be in the virtual space. And therefore, they're going to have certain abilities that have been literally reserved for God.
Your mind just always runs at the same speed, but an M can add more or less computer hardware to run faster or slower. And therefore, if the world around them seems to be going too fast, they can just speed up their mind and the world around them will seem to slow down. In addition, an M can make a copy of itself at that moment. This copy will remember everything the same, and if it starts out with the same speed, looking at the same speed, it might even be told, you are the copy. An M can make archive copies, and with enough redundant archives, an M can be immortal, in principle, though not usually in practice. And an M can move its brain, the computer that represents its brain, from one physical location to another. M's can actually move around the world at the speed of light. And by moving to a new location, they can interact more quickly with M's near that new location. M's are crammed together in a small number of very dense cities. This is not only how they see themselves in virtual reality, it's also how they actually are physically crammed together. So at M speeds, physical travel feels really painfully slow. So most M cities are self-sufficient, most war is cyber war, and most of the rest of the Earth away from the M cities is left to the humans because the M's really aren't that interested in it.
Now, I have to mention the part about compact cities. What's that sound like? Right? Agenda 21, now Sustainable Development for the year 2030. I mean, you know what? The whole UN thing sounds like they're just setting up for these emulets here. They're just building these cities for these emulets to live, and we will basically become fodder, or I don't know, just energy sources like the battery in the Matrix or something.
It gives these computers access to these new resources, maybe you could call them parallel universes, in order to do something that you couldn't otherwise do.
Pretty much kind of a way to put people into a similar state that the victims of MK Ultra experienced in, submerged in water and having all your senses taken away, interfacing the supernatural realm with the physical realm. And this line is completely being blurred and torn apart, and that's why I think our physical bodies, perhaps, is the most prevalent portal into the other dimensions, and that's what's being exploited here.
And this is bizarre, because we don't see those other things. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these.
It really got me to think that these smart cities are potentially, truly, portals into other worlds, and they're just getting a bunch of people ready to move into those areas so as to be tied into the system. It's not just about slavery. It's ultimately about enslaving your soul.
Here's how I do it. I copy you exactly into a digital environment. That copy process has all of the properties we were talking about as being a soul. First of all, it's immaterial, because copying, that's not a thing, it's a process. It's immortal. It's just like you. You can put it in any environment you want, heaven, hell, make a simulation. So, all of these things that reside in our heads, these abstract concepts, I think that eventually we can build them, and we have to decide what we want to build.
They are building false realities into which they want to induct you so they can play God.
It is called a digital twin, and it represents a new era in simulation, a new world of predictability, a promising new tool for engineering the future. A digital twin is a complete virtual prototype of an entire system.
A frequency is emitted from a device and hits the target at the resonant frequency that target's body, brain, and DNA are already resonating at, already vibrating at. They sync up, and there is, for lack of a better term, a frequency superhighway that is connected between the device and the targeted individual. And it is upon this frequency superhighway that you can send data and information and instructions to the targeted individual, much in the same way that you can send data and instructions over fiber optic cables that power the internet, for example.
Your brain reality is your reality. And if, in fact, I can import information into that brain and take outputs from that brain and link that to an avatar so that brain thinks that it's embodied moving in the world and experiencing the world, can we do this? Yeah, we can do these kind of things.
And that's very much what's going on. They have, unfortunately, hacked the human mind, hacked the human brain and the human body. And it is once that superhighway a frequency is set up between the device and the targeted individual, they can send instructions. And those instructions ride on the wave of frequency that it was tuned into the individual's resonant frequency. And then they can send instructions that manipulate thoughts, manipulate emotions, manipulate behavior, and manipulate even the vitals and so forth, the heartbeat, the breathing pattern of the targeted individual.
And they obtain remotely an EEG readout of your brainwave signature. It's called a digital brainwave imprint. And they take that digital brainwave imprint, that copy, that digital copy of your brainwave signature, and they download it, or I should say upload it back into their their supercomputer, which is actually a conscious computer. And then they tie you to that conscious computer for life. How? By way of a continuous stream of energy, of electromagnetic low-frequency waves that are specifically tuned to your unique brainwave signature. Nobody else on Earth has the same brainwave signature. It's like it's unique to you alone. It's like a set of fingerprints. Nobody else on Earth has your same set of fingerprints. Well, nobody else on Earth has your same brainwave signature. And what the stream of energy is designed to do is it's designed to interface and interact based on that frequency, based on your brainwave pattern. And that's how it's able to speak to. It's able to speak to and decode the neurotransmitters in your brain, and that's how they're able to turn the brain of the mind control victim into their, their very own visual, verbal, and auditive communication system. It takes time. They have to build a cognitive model for the purposes of being able to do that. But that's how the technology is designed to operate.
There's a resonant frequency to DNA itself that all matter in the universe resonates. All matter is animated by sound, and as a result, there is a frequency that is able to be measured, that measures the rate of vibration, for lack of a better term, of the DNA itself, of the human mind, and of course of the human body, and indeed everything else in nature. It is by understanding the individual resonant frequency of the individual's DNA and the individual resonant frequency of an individual's mind that this technology is able to be fine-tuned to an individual. And the only reason for that is to hook up the technology to the individual.
The Human Genome Project was carried out at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, where I was a staff scientist for 5 years. They were tracking people in the lab by the electromagnetic frequency emitted by individuals' DNA. What we know about Google is that they are doing DNA surveys from space. And it seems to be on a grid system. So they're doing a survey from space, and they went down the west coast of South America and then came up the east coast, and now they're in Southeast Asia. This is part of the United Nations Agenda 21 program, tracking and identifying of humans and animals. The DNA in every living thing has a unique frequency and signal. That is what they're using, what they're focusing on, and what they're weaponizing to completely control us.
They obtain an EEG digital brainwave imprint of your brainwave signature. They download that back into their supercomputer, their conscious computer, and then they tie you to that supercomputer for life by way of remotely, by way of a continuous stream of energy, a continuous stream of electromagnetic low frequency waves. And that stream contains a hidden carrier frequency.
And so the resonant frequency of the DNA is what they use to fine-tune the technology to take total control of your entire body, spirit, soul, being, and mind. It's total not only mind control, it's total human being control. And it is the essential element that allows them to manipulate your emotions so totally and completely, to manipulate your thoughts so totally and completely, to manipulate everything you do and see and hear and think and feel every single minute of every single day.
This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
There is a very real risk that you are going to become a full-blown 24/7 targeted individual. And this technology at that point, when it is nationwide, will be used by automated supercomputer software programming that will manipulate the emotions and the behavior and the thoughts of everybody in the United States of America. And it can all be done remotely. It's very much like the microchip kind of tracking the New World Order, this entire, control grid that's supposed to be rolled out against the American people someday. And I'm here to tell you that it's already here. There isn't going to come a day where there's troops in the streets and tanks rolling down your neighborhood and
riot gear and all this stuff. We might have isolated incidents like that. It might get like that every once in a while, but the true control grid is this technology, voice to skull, hive mind, behavior manipulation technology. And it can all be done remotely. It can be done simply by targeting you with the frequency, locking into the resonant frequency of your DNA and your mind, and in that manner completely track and trace and control you.